So today we are going over drop voicings for the 8-string guitar, and specifically drop 2, drop 4 voicings. Now if you don't know what that means, don't worry. If you stick around for a little bit, I will go over in full detail what these naming conventions mean and kind of where they come from and how they can be useful for you. But before we get into that, I want to just let you know that there is a free PDF down in the description below this video that has the major 7, minor 7, dominant 7, and minor 7 flat 5 chord types in the drop 2, drop voicing shape for you to start working on the guitar. My Patreon subscribers will get the full array of chord types, so that includes major 7 sharp 5, diminished major 7, dominant 7 flat 5, etc, etc. So all 13 types of 4-part chords are available to you, so you can check out that on the Patreon. But hopefully the basic 4 is enough for most of you to get going, figuring out any harmony you might need from the major scale. So what is a drop voicing exactly? Well, it is simply a naming convention that describes how we arrived at a certain chord voicing. So let me explain something else, a different way to arrive at chords before we get into that will hopefully let you understand a little bit clearer. So most people understand that a 4-part chord has 4 notes in it, the root, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th of a scale. So if you play all of those notes, you get this 4-part chord. Now we could cycle through those notes and do them in different orders, so instead of 1, 3, 5, 7, we could go 3, 5, 7, 1. Or we could go 5, 7, 1, 3, or 7, 1, 3, 5. And then we have 4 different versions of that chord. But what if we start mixing those numbers up a little bit? So what if we said 1, 3, 7, 5, and we switched the last 2 notes around? Or what if we said 1, 5, 3, 7? Now we can go through this systematically, logically, and find all 24 different voicing types that exist for a 4-part chord. And it would look something like this. Now this makes quite a lot of logical sense, as we can see all the different permutations of these 4 different notes. And actually it makes a lot of mathematical sense too, as to how many voicings there can be if you were to do 4 factorial. 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, because there are 4 notes, equals 24 different versions of the chord. But that doesn't make a ton of sense if you're playing an instrument and trying to think of these things musically. Sure, we could go through all 24 permutations and try to figure out how we would play that, but there is an easier way. And that is where drop voicings come in handy. So let's go back to our basic 1, 3, 5, 7 chord. In right now, just the key of C major, so I have C, E, G, and B. So the 1, 3, 5, 7 of the scale. What a drop voicing tells us to do is to take one of those notes and drop it down by an octave. So in the case of, let's say, just a simple drop 3 voicing, we would take the 3rd note from the top, so we'd count backwards, 2, 3, and this 3rd note from the top, which in this case is an E, is dropped an octave. So now we have, and we could find an easier way to finger this so it's not so precarious and hitting wrong notes, and that would be something like this. So now the order of the pitches is going to be 3, 1, 5, 7. So we could then take this through the 4 different inversions. And we'd have 4 chords that make a little bit more sense on an instrument. So there are 6 different types of chords that use this drop voicing kind of vocabulary. The first one doesn't actually say drop at all, it's just called a closed voicing, and that is when all the notes are in their kind of fundamental position within 1 octave, so it's closed in an octave. And that's our 1, 3, 5, 7, 3, 5, 7, 1, 5, 7, 1, 3, and 7, 1, 3, 5. Those voicings are a little hard to do on guitar because they can get very stretchy. So the one we're looking at today is the drop 2, drop 4 voicing. So to arrive at that chord, we're going to take the 2nd note from the top and the 4th note from the top. So 1, 2, so the G, and then the C, the root, and drop both of those down by 1 octave. So that will give us, and again we can choose to voice this in a way that fits our hands better, and we get something like this. So these voicings I find are particularly nice on the 8-string guitar because even on the low strings, they ring fairly clearly and they don't get too muddy, at least not until we get down to the lowest frets. But even then, if you play it gently and don't just pull at them really hard, they can be nice and clear. So these particular voicings are going to be a wonderful way to enter this world of 4-part harmony if you haven't already, and you play an A-string guitar. So what do we do now that we have these voicings? Maybe you're looking at the sheet and wondering how this can be useful for you in your actual music writing or music practice. So what I would recommend doing first is just spending some time with these sounds and getting used to them, maybe getting used to them physically as shapes on the guitar, and then getting used to their sounds. So for instance, you might want to start with this major 7 sound that we've been playing around with for the first part of this video. And just get used to that sound. It's a little bit happy, it's a little bit melancholy, quite beautiful. And then start addressing the other types of chords. So instead of major 7, we can play a dominant 7. That one's a little bit crunchier, a little bit less resolved, a little kind of more whimsical a little bit. We can look at that minor 7 chord. That one has a bit of a longing quality to it, a little bit maybe sadder. And then finally the minor 7 flat 5. Now this one really feels like it wants to go somewhere. It's unresolved. This truly has a longing feeling. So try them on different string groups, try them in different keys, and then start to go through the inversions and just get used to these new sounds in your vocabulary. You can even start writing with them pretty quickly. You don't have to know theoretically what's going on with these chords to start using them. Right, we can take a major 7 chord. And the beautiful thing about these chords is that they kind of sound good no matter what you do with them. So we can just move this around in parallel. And it all sounds good. So if you are into writing metal riffs or maybe some heavier music, and you wonder what to break up those heavy, more power chord based riffs with, then these kind of chords can be very useful, even if you don't play the whole chord shape. You can start to use the notes from within them to add some variety and color to your riffs. So once you get tired of doing that, or you're looking for something a little more challenging, you might want to start working through these voicings in a little bit more of a functional manner. So one way you can do that, and I think a great entry point to this, is to voice a major scale using these chords. So here's our basic major scale. Just using G major. So the 1 chord of a major scale is a major 7 chord. The 2 chord is a minor 7. So here's an A minor 7. Move up to that 2nd note of the scale. Move up to the 3rd note, we have another minor 7. 4th note is a major 7 again. When we get to that 5th note of the scale, it's going to be a dominant 7. The 6 is a minor 7, which makes sense because you might know that the 6 is the relative minor of any key. The 7 is going to be that minor 7 flat 5 chord. And then finally, we get back to 1 with our major 7. So try that on a few different string groups in different keys, and then you can try it with the different inversions of the chords. So instead of starting in root position with that 1 on the bottom of the chord, we can do the first inversion of it, and now the root is on the top of the chord. So we'd go through the same thing, the same scale, but now the root is in a different position and we're doing different shapes. So these are now going to be the first inversion shapes. So again, we have major 7, minor 7, minor 7, major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, minor 7 flat 5, and then we go back to our major 7. Now it might be a good idea as well to start moving across the string groups as you do this, because as you noticed I got pretty high on my neck there, so don't be afraid to try and connect vertically across the string groups. Now there are many other exercises and applications that we can have with these voicings on the guitar, especially the A-string guitar with this extended range that we are afforded, but I'll save that for future videos. I just wanted to give you something to get started, especially if you haven't looked at any of these voicings before. In future videos, I will be looking at some of the other voicing shapes, such as drop 3, drop 2, drop 2, drop 3, double drop 2, drop 4, and close voicings. And maybe I can show you how some of those can actually be useful even when they are super difficult to stretch out and do on the guitar. But that's going to be about it for this video. I hope I could introduce you to something new and give you some new ideas for how you can make your music more interesting or some cool new things to practice. Thank you to all my Patreon subscribers for helping this channel continue and to give me that extra boost to keep working on all these PDFs and these chord diagrams so I can get them out to you guys. So wherever you are in the world, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and as always, happy practicing.